worship you today. Creation knows the voice that's spoken to the void, the breath that brought the dust to life, and sang the stars to form. The darkness fears the voice that drove it back before. And though the night is long, I know your light, it will drive it back once more. One word from you, things change on your authority. Your word is true. Things change on your authority. Yes, we believe it's just one word. Come on, sing this out. My fight is not my own, 'cause you're working. Yes, its end is in your hands, and I worship you because I know all things. God, they must bow to your command. We believe it, that one word from you, things change on your authority. Your word, it's true. Things change on your authority. Come on, can we sing that again together? The one word from you, yes, everything changes. Things change on your authority. Your word, it's true. Things change on your authority. Oh, will heaven not prevail when strongholds not be moved? Will spirits not be silenced and cower at his roll? Sing this out. For if my God is for me, over your life, then what have I to fear? And I will not deny him the glory that is his. Come on, hands lifted, declare, will heaven not prevail? Will strongholds not be moved in the name of Jesus? Will spirits not be silent? The darkness has to flee. And cower at his roll. For if my God is for me, then what have I to fear? And I will not deny him the glory that is. So we sing in faith that heaven will prevail, and strongholds will be they'll come crashing down, and spirits will be silent and cower at his roll. For I know my God is for me, so what have I to fear? Oh, we've got nothing to fear.